So the analogy or the little image that came to my mind when I was reflecting just a moment ago was like maybe we believe our hand is golden and everything we touch turns to gold. Well, once we realize that's not true, we don't throw away our hand or stop using our hand. It's still very valuable and very useful, but rather we learn its proper place. We're not asking the hand to do more than it really can do. We're not asking the hand to operate outside of its limits. It, it doesn't really turn stuff to gold when we touch. But we may have believed that previously. So that's kind of like the way we're learning to work with our thoughts in these meditations. And that's why we explore things in a way that kind of undermines thinking, in a way that kind of undermines thoughts' absoluteness or objectivity, to begin to see, to begin to put it in its proper place, to not expect more out of it than it can actually do, because it's just a filter, and that filter is based on very specific foundational beliefs or limits to the information it can present to us, which again I like to call it time and space or time and distance. Everything is fractured out from that, which isn't useless. The hand isn't useless, but it's just not. Maybe we don't have to take all the information that it gives to us quite as seriously whenever we begin to put thought in its proper place. So that's some of what came to me right prior to the meditation. So I thought that little hand analogy was kind of fun, because we can't. I think all of us have tried, like, get rid of the ego or get rid of thinking, or like those attitudes are kind of attitudes we hold in spirituality in the beginning, and we try really hard to get rid of parts of ourselves, and maybe years and years and years and maybe even decades later we're still struggling with the same things. And so granted, there may have been changes, but maybe none of that even has to be struggled with once we realize the proper place for thoughts. So in these meditations, we're able to kind of see that a little bit more clearly, I think. So if you guys are ready, then maybe we'll go ahead and begin. So feel free to keep your videos on or turn them off. Definitely put your microphones on mute. John, I'm going to mute you. Sorry. Okay. So if anyone has any extra devices like phones, maybe put them on do not disturb, so you are not disturbed if that's a problem. All right. And if you like, feel free to close your eyes with me. The very first thing that we'll do is I'm actually going to read 2 sentences from the end of this book called The Ashes of Love, Sayings on the Essence of Non-Duality by Rupert Spira. And it goes, at the heart of experience, there is a fire that burns all we know. Offer everything to that fire. What remains, the ashes of love, is that for which we have longed our whole life. So what is it to offer everything to that fire, other than kindly and gently, not referring to thought, images, and memory. That is the fire. The act of not referring. Therefore, the most helpful thing, anytime we would like to become more centered, if and when our eyes are open, or meditate, if and when our eyes are closed, is to simply notice what's already here, what's already happening. And of course, this doesn't mean a conceptual knowing. But yet, concepts may be there. Ideas may be there. Descriptions and labels may be there. But instead of seeing them as something to refer to, we'll just see them as an object which is already here, already happening. This is that fire. The fire which we have longed for our whole lives. And similarly, we may notice a sound. And along with that sound, we may notice thought attempting to describe what it is or what to do with it, what to do about it. But here, if we hear anything, if we are trying to become centered, if and when our eyes are open, or meditate, if and when our eyes are closed, we're not so interested in what thought, images, or memory could tell us about what a sound is, or what to do about it. We're not so interested in referring to the indirect knowledge that thought, images, and memory are. But rather, just to notice them as an object, something that's already here, already happening. And so is true with feeling. And within feeling, we can include both emotion and sensation. If we notice a feeling of any kind, usually what immediately follows, innocently, is what that feeling means, what it is, and what to do about it. But here, we're not interested in referring to the indirect information that thoughts, images, or memory deliver to us, but rather notice them as an object in which is already here, is already happening. Now that we've taken a step back from thought, we can begin to look at it more objectively. If we discern that all the stories that thought describes to us are all based in the fundamental structure of time and distance, then everything we viewed would be filtered through those limitations. But most of us, to some degree or another, believe that time, and certainly distance, is something in the world rather than in thought. So let's take a moment to examine that in this more objective point of view. Let's say we're looking out our window. Now, would it be possible to know that the rest of the city, if that's what you see, is just beyond the horizon without referring to a thought, an image, or a memory? Would it be possible to know that there is the rest of the city just beyond the horizon without referring to a thought, an image, or memory to get that information? And this question has two primary purposes. One is to legitimately see the way in which thought adds to our direct experience, and as such creates the experience of distance, creates what seems like a three-dimensional physical world. And the other purpose of this contemplative question is to watch the mind struggle. As we pretend we're looking out our window at the horizon and ask ourselves that contemplative question, is it possible to know the rest of this city is just beyond the horizon without referring to a thought, an image, or memory? As the mind attempts to see if it can know what's beyond the horizon, it struggles. As it itself sees its own limitation. As it itself sees, it does not interpret the world objectively, but rather through its own limitations, its own beliefs, its own framework. In this instance, distance or space. So as we pretend we're looking out a window at the horizon, asking ourselves, is it possible to know the rest of the city is just beyond the horizon without referring to a thought, an image, or memory to get that information? Is it possible to know that without referring to a thought, an image, or memory to do so? Now, what are the implications of this? What do we immediately have to consider when we witness this? If we witness the way in which thought adds to our direct experience and creates, literally is the mechanism which creates what we call the world in the way we conceive it, then it requires us to reconsider some things. It requires us to reconsider what is this life? My previously held concepts of a three-dimensional physical reality, which we refer to as planet Earth and the universe, to expand all the way out, now is seen as a concept. Maybe we could go as far as to say a fairy tale. something parents have passed down to their kids for generations. Maybe then, from this vantage point of witnessing the way in which, if we're looking out a window and we ask ourselves the contemplative question, can I tell that there is the rest of the city beyond this horizon without referring to a thought, an image, or a memory? When we see that, then this moment appears to be more of an image rather than a three-dimensional physical world we're living in. This moment itself of looking out the window is seen more as an image, something more akin to a dream, rather than the old fairy tale or the old way we used to conceive of ourselves as being human on planet Earth within the universe. If we see that it can't be known that the rest of the city is just beyond the horizon without referring to a thought, an image, or memory, it causes us to reflect on those implications. Our old ideas that were passed down to us of this physical reality we live in just don't hold up to really examining our experience like this directly. But if everything in life is if we refer to thoughts for everything in life, we would never get to this point of witnessing the fairy tale that has been passed down to us. We would never get to this point of witnessing the concept of this being a three-dimensional physical world that we believe in. We would never get to that point if we referred to thoughts, images, and memory for everything. For everything, we would never get to this point of witnessing that this is not, that maybe this is not, just maybe this is not exactly what the limitations of our thinking has been telling us that it is. Maybe, just maybe, this is not exactly true. Maybe it will always look that way through the limits through which we are attempting to know something by. For attempting to know the world or reality through the limits inherent in thinking, then the world or reality will always appear to us in accordance with the limitations of that vehicle of thought. So when we look out the window, it will always appear to us as what our thoughts tell us, a three-dimensional physical world in which the rest of the city is just beyond the horizon. be very clear on the difference between concepts, thoughts, images, and memory, and direct experience. Just as if we really wanted to know what an apple tastes like, we wouldn't refer to the indirect experience of a book or the indirect knowledge of a book. We would go to the apple itself. Similarly, if we really wanted to know the world or reality, we wouldn't refer to the indirect knowledge of a thought, image, or memory. We would go to the experience of the world or reality itself. And when we do that, the world starts to appear to be a little bit more like an image, which is awfully akin to a dream. Imagine being in a dream on the streets of New York. See the cars and the buildings. In those moments we're dreaming, it really feels like we're in a three-dimensional physical world made up of matter. And as we look around the streets of New York, we see other people, cars and buildings. And it really feels like there is distance. There's separation between ourself and what is seen. It really feels like distance is there. It really feels like we're on an actual planet, in an actual universe. But maybe in that moment, if we did the same contemplative considerations, contemplative question asking that we just did, then we might ask ourselves, is the rest of New York City just beyond the horizon? Is it possible to know that the rest of New York City is just beyond the horizon without referring to a thought, an image, or memory to know it? Again, while standing in the streets of New York in this dream analogy, we might ask ourselves, is it possible to know that the rest of New York City is just beyond the horizon? Is it possible to know that without referring to a thought, an image, or memory to know it? And the moment we do that, we might recognize that this isn't a planet that I'm standing on. And as such, it may reveal itself to look more like an image. And in that moment, we might wake up from the dream. And maybe that's true for our waking state too. The moment we ask ourselves these important questions, like, is it possible to know that the rest of the city is just outside my window, just just past the horizon when I look out the window without referring to a thought, an image, or a memory to get that information. And the moment we do that, we might recognize how the whole idea of a three-dimensional physical world, planet Earth, and the universe, we might recognize the way in which those are held as concepts. We might recognize that all of those ideas are delivered to us through the vehicle of thought, images, or memory. And as such, we may recognize that this moment is kind of more closely related to an image, which is kind of like a dream. And the moment we realize this, we wake up. We know ourselves, not as the human, not as the physical body, not as these thoughts, images, or memory which plague most of our minds, but more so whatever's right behind it, who you truly are. And in this way, become refreshed and replenished by discovering eternity. The infinite. That which could be said is immediately prior to the finite, to the forms which we refer to as the body, thoughts, the world. Finite. seen the way in which all of this wasn't quite what we thought it was, then it becomes much easier to step outside of it. Which, right outside of the finite, is the infinite, is eternity. And ask yourself the final question. What do I most need to know? And when you feel you've received whatever it is you've needed to receive, very slowly, we'll start to allow eternity, infinity, to filter back through the limitations of the mind, thought, images, and memory, coming back into what we call the form of a body, and allow perception to recreate the world. Knowing that it's all birthed from eternity. It's all birthed from infinity. It's all birthed from that which you are. And as you allow that process, when you're ready, and only when you're ready, feel free to take in a deep breath and open your eyes.